Today, I'm putting my guilt-tripping skills to the test. Can I make my friends feel guilty enough to do anything I want? Let's find out. Guilt-tripping. It's a phenomenon we've all experienced at some point or another. You know, when someone makes you feel so bad about yourself that you feel obligated to do something you wouldn't ordinarily do. It's a sneaky tactic that can be incredibly effective. Until you realize you've been guilt-tripped, that is. Moving on to the negative effects of guilt-tripping. When you're constantly being made to feel guilty, it can lead to a toxic dynamic in relationships. You start to feel resentful and trapped, like you're walking on eggshells to avoid disappointing the other person. And let's be real, who wants to feel like that? It's like being in a never-ending cycle of emotional manipulation. Guilt-tripping also has a profound impact on our personal well-being. When you're constantly being told you're not good enough, or that you owe someone something, it can lead to low self-esteem, anxiety, and even depression. It's like having a constant voice in your head telling you you're not good enough. And who needs that? But what's even more disturbing is that guilt-tripping can be a form of control. When someone uses guilt to get what they want from you, it's a way of exerting power over your emotions and actions. It's like being in a hostage situation, where you're forced to yield to the other person's demands just to avoid feeling guilty. And in extreme cases, guilt-tripping can even lead to emotional abuse. When someone consistently makes you feel bad about yourself or your choices, it can be incredibly damaging. You start to doubt your own judgment and feel like you're walking on thin ice. It's a vicious cycle that's hard to break free from. Let's dive deeper into the common tactics used in guilt-tripping. One of the most obvious ones is playing the victim. You know, when someone makes you feel responsible for their emotions or well-being. If you really cared about me, you'd do this for me. Yeah, that's a classic guilt trip. Another tactic is making you feel guilty by omission. For example, you never do anything for me, I always do everything for you. It's like they're keeping a scoreboard of who's done what for whom, and you're always in the red. Guilt trippers also love to use emotional blackmail. You know, when someone threatens to cut you off or punish you in some way if you don't do what they want. That's a classic move.
And then there's the subtle art of gaslighting, making you doubt your own perceptions and memories.
You're being too sensitive. I didn't mean it like that. Yeah, that's a real treat. But why do people use guilt tripping in the first place? Well, sometimes it's a learned behavior from childhood. Maybe they grew up in an environment where guilt was used to control their behavior, and they think it's a normal way to interact with others. Other times, it's a coping mechanism for dealing with their own emotional pain. They might feel so overwhelmed by their own emotions that they lash out at others to try and regain control. I want to share a personal story that illustrates the damaging impact of guilt tripping. I had a friend who would constantly make me feel guilty about not spending enough time with them. They'd say things like, "You only care about yourself, you never make time for me." And I'd feel awful, like I was a bad friend. But one day, I realized that I was only responsible for my own actions, not their happiness. It was a liberating moment, let me tell you. Guilt tripping can be incredibly damaging, but it's not impossible to overcome. When you recognize the tactics being used against you, you can start to push back and assert your own boundaries. And if the other person refuses to respect those boundaries, then it might be time to reevaluate the relationship altogether. So, to sum it up, guilt tripping is a manipulative tactic that can have serious negative effects on our relationships and personal well-being. It's essential to recognize when someone is using guilt to control us, and to take steps to assert our own autonomy and emotional freedom. Thanks for watching, guys! If you've ever experienced guilt tripping, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. And if you're interested in learning more about emotional manipulation, I've got a great video on it that you can check out in the link in my bio.